In this video, I think I made a pretty big mistake. And oh, some of you will probably be screaming at the screen, but anyways, when that happens, I guess the temptation is just to erase the video, but I don't really want to do that. I think, at least with me, and I think other people as well, it's pretty common for me to make like a handful of big mistakes every year. I mean, it happens, and I sometimes do some really dumb stuff. And like in this case, I just got in like a one-track mind, and I was working too quickly, and I didn't really think about the entire situation. Now, if I talk about what I did, it's going to be a spoiler, so I'll talk about that after. All right, I got another service call out here while I'm working on that stupid thing. I hate when that happens, but anyways, we got a compressor here that's tripping out on oil safety, and you've got a discharge line, and that's just gonna separate the oil out of the discharge and run it back. And this line is not hot at all. Whereas on this one, I mean, it's hot enough to where it's uncomfortable to touch. So we might have a line that's stopped up or something like that. See what's going on here. I do know that valve is open. I double checked that. All right, my plan is on this that I'm going to pinch this line off and shut that valve down. And then I'm going to put another valve and a tap in here. And then I'm going to use an oil pump to force oil that way and that way to see where our restriction is. All right, I got the line pinched off and the valve closed, so I'm gonna cut this and get my other valve in. All right, we've got our valve set up. I may have to notch this track, I don't know, we're just gonna make it work. And I've got the tap in because I couldn't find one at the supply house that had a tap, and I've got plenty of flux on that brass fitting, because you gotta use flux with brass. We're gonna braze all this up now. Get my heat a lot more towards the brass now. That's what's not getting hot. Alright, there we go. Now, with this tool, you really got to think about how you're pinching it, because whichever way you pinch it, you've got to get the tool in there perpendicular to round it back out. Okay, so like I said, you got to think about where you're going to pinch it and how you're going to round it to make sure that you've got clearances. So I'm going to get this on there now and we'll look at it. Okay, to make it easy on myself, I went ahead and got this one cinched down. And now I'm going to tighten this one. Just let it reform that copper. And normally, you're not going to have a leak from that unless you do it more than once. But I will leak test that to be sure. All right, there's what it looks like. And so unfortunately, it is going to be deformed a little bit, but whenever we take the system down, we can fix that, but that's not an option right now. So this will work for now. All right, I've got my oil pump hooked up. When I'm putting oil through a Schrader fitting, I like to remove the Schrader. And this is a low loss hose, but I have it gutted. It's just a normal hose. Went ahead and bled all the air out, nothing but oil in here, got it hooked up. So we're
kind of shut one down and try to force oil that way, shut that one down, try to force it that way. All right, the oil went fine this way, which is what I expected, but I'm having a hard time, real hard time, forcing it that way. I won't be able to film this at the same time, but I'm gonna put a lot of pressure on this thing and see if I can't get that line blown out. All right, got it going. The oil came back instantly, and yes, it might be a little overfilled. The line is nice and warm now, so I think we got it. Whatever way, it broke loose really hard this way. I mean, look at that right there. I can't do everything. I mean, we're nowhere even near done with that, and unfortunately I'm gonna have to get to this really some other time. But for now, everything, you know, this will at least get them some cooling in the freezer. All right, back to what we were doing.
All right, let's talk about what I did. So now I can't be 100% sure on this because I didn't like get the model number of the oil separator and look it up and all that crap. This is just something that the light bulb went on. You know, sometimes you start thinking about jobs and it's just like crap. All right, so my first mistake, I think, was that I assumed that the other oil separator on the working system was operating normally. And that got me. Because when I felt that line and it was hot and it stayed hot, I just instantly got in my head, especially this is an old, just piece of shit rack. And because of that, I shouldn't have assumed that that oil separator was working, but just because it's an old piece of shit, you know, I thought to myself, well, maybe it's some kind of like cap tube design and, you know, they're limiting the flow, but you know, it's not in, they're limiting the flow, but that's all it is. Okay. But, you know, as I got to thinking more about the oil separator, I think it's, you know, got a float and it's probably accumulating oil and releasing that oil all at one time. So the one that was hot, it might actually be bad, as in it's not accumulating the oil. We've just got a constant feed of discharge gas / oil mist into the suction line. Well, the one, so that was my first mistake. And then, so when I went to clear the clog, what I was actually probably doing is putting enough pressure to like force that needle back up and maybe free the float. I don't know. So when I did that, I'm just totally forcing that valve to open in kind of a bad way. Now, to be honest, it worked beautifully, and all of the oil that had accumulated in that oil separator just shot right back. And I've checked on it, and it's working great now. So in one sense, I got lucky because I didn't overthink it, and I just did what my instinct was, and that is to like force flow back to free up whatever was stuck. But, you know, whether or not that's a good idea to do what I did, I don't know. It worked, but I didn't think it through as to what I was doing, what was going on in the oil separator and all that. So there's my big mistake. It has worked out fine. I've checked on that rack, and it's running great and maintaining oil great. And I gauged up on it, and the valve and float and all that appears to be doing what it's designed to do. So that's that. There's my big mistake.